Hi everyone! So Diablo 4 Season 3 is starting very soon, and with that we have a lot of updated guides and of course tier lists for you here on Maxroll. So the team has come together and we discussed what we think, what will be the best builds going into Season 3. Now there are some unknowns here with the new construct and how exactly they work, how impactful they are, etc. We don't really know that much about that, so it's a little bit of a guesswork. And on top of this, we also have a bunch of new unique items that are both very impactful and mostly unknown in how exactly they work, what kind of stats they have, etc. So this definitely impacts what you're about to see a little bit. But for the most part, I think it is pretty obvious that one class is a clear winner this season. And that's probably no secret, the Barbarian. So let's jump into the actual tier list here. This is our endgame tier list. So this covers basically everything from level 50 to 100, all the types of content, you know, the speed of like how you can farm, the nightmare dungeons, the boss kill speed, the general playability, defense, etc. So kind of like all-compassing, all-around package. So this is how we rank most of these builds here. And well, there are, yeah, as I mentioned, a lot of barb up there this time around, yet again. So in Season 3, I went over the patch notes in another video if you have not seen them. But TLDR is Barb's got maybe a blue eye, and it was very, very mild nerfs to the Barbs with some pretty crazy buffs coming in here. So for example, they buffed some of the key passes like Unconstrained and Walking Arsenal that were already relatively decent, and now they're just pretty crazy. And they gave Rend a huge bump that definitely needed it. But in general, like the good builds stayed really good and the bad builds moved up, so Barb is just really far up there. And on top of that, if the constructs in Season 3 and the new companions actually turn out to be like scalable enough with their damage, then Barb probably has most access to that damage scaling as well, due to berserking and other like, you know, more stats, more effects to actually scale up the damage of your character and then scaling your companion. So in general, I expect great things here. Personally, I'm also gonna season start a double swing Barbarian. Not because it's up there necessarily, but I wanted to try to race for world first with another class this time, and I think that will be the one. So this is my build that I will choose for day 1, and then probably day 2 or so I'm gonna start with something like this here. Now, for the Barbarians, there are actually two kind of newcomers here. So one is the Rend. That was already a build, but no one really played it. And it has also changed quite a lot. There was this charge change and the new unique item that gives a charge or like any of the brawling skills a way to apply Rend stacks. So you kind of like charge through the dungeon, leap through the dungeon, and you apply Rend everywhere and stuff just dies. So that's kind of the idea there, I guess. And there's also the pure charge build. So this is something that people have been theory crafting, but we currently don't have a guide for it yet. Rend will be here because this is something that is completely new, that needs to be tested if that is actually like a real thing. But that could even move up to S tier, and then basically everything on Barb is almost S tier at this point. So basically the idea here is that, yeah, some builds kind of include charge for maybe some extra damage or some mobility, but this one is like a pure charge DPS build that kind of just like goes around like this. But again, untested. So this has an asterisk here, which means, yeah, we don't really know right now. There are some other builds like that as well, like for example, Stormclaw Druid. You know, it lost a lot from, for example, Moonrise dropping out. And then we get like this new unique glove that is tailored towards basic attacks, and we have to wait and see how it actually works. Stormclaw could be pretty crazy because of that unique. Also the same for Arclight potentially. So there is definitely potential there with some of those new uniques for some of those builds to kind of like shift a little bit. But for the most part, I think most of the builds are in a pretty good spot here. Now to talk a little bit about the other classes, let's go next to the Druid. We have huge buffs to Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm was already a pretty good build regardless. It mostly suffered a little bit on single target damage, but they also get a huge new unique item, a glove as well, that is tailored to Lightning Storm and gives it a massive damage buff. So that alone is going to carry this build, and it's going to be extremely fast. It's going to like annihilate entire screens and probably also kill high tier bosses pretty easily. So that is a superb build. I've been theory crafting this myself a little bit lately, And I'm really excited to play a Lightning Storm Druid this time around as well. So that's probably going to be my second or my third build personally. And I think a lot of Druid enjoyers will like this. There are other good Druids built as well. We have Werewolf up there, for example, a Tornado Werewolf. So that is still really good. It used to be the best build in the game for a long time. And it's still really good anyway, despite Grizzly Rage nerfs and stuff like that. But Druids in general also kind of moved up a little bit because of the Spirit Boon change. So they made the 30% crit buff actually multiplicative from the Spirit Boons. I don't know the name now, but that definitely helps the Druid class as a whole. So while Poison Shred is dead now with the Blurred Beast change, that is just, we actually just deleted that guide. We still have a Shred guide here, but it's not really as powerful. It's gonna like struggle a little bit on some of the bosses and stuff. But even if we don't like the Werewolf options here with the Lightning and the Tornado, then there's also the Pulverized Druid still. Overpower got a little bit of a nerf, but it's not too bad. And in general, Druids are looking pretty solid, and I would call them the second best class because they have 2 S-tier builds and they are just solid all around with a bunch of builds. So I think they're doing pretty well. Next up, we have the Necro. So for the Necro, we have Bone Spear up here. I mean, this is the bottom of S tier, so you have to kind of like see the distinction a little bit. You know, it's obviously not going to do damage of Hoda. It's not going to like one-shot world bosses or something like that. But this is not really the metric anyway. This is kind of like funny memes you can do. But for like general blasting and, you know, pushing higher tier 9 dimensions or so, Bone Spear is still formidable despite the Season 2 nerfs. And there might even be some shenanigans to like include Bone Spirit there now with like the new aspects and the, you know, like the new power that Bone Spirit has gotten. And also the pure Bone Spirit build. We moved it up from, I think, C to B tier. However, it's maybe much better than that. So this is also, again, a build that remains to be seen first because it got some pretty major changes with how the essence recovery works, with how you can deal AoE damage. So we'll have to wait and see. I guess you're going to see pretty cool clips at the very least from Bone Spirit Necro. I think it's going to feel amazing to play this. Is it going to be as fast and as powerful as the other builds? Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait until launch. But maybe that actually moves up a little bit. There is definitely potential here, I would say. But yeah, Bone Spear is like the overall, like, you know, solid Necro build. Infinimus has definitely dropped a little bit now with the nerfs to Corpse Explosion. And there were some other buffs here, like we moved up several a little bit. Bloodlands is okay, but we don't really know if the new unique item is really gonna cut it to move it much up. And yeah, in general, Necro is looking all right. The only stuff that is really terrible is down here, the summoner stuff. I wouldn't really suggest that to anyone if you want to play like a pure summoner build. Maybe some stuff can be done with golems and so on, but realistically, minions are just kind of like awful in the game still. And this has not really changed so far. Next up, we have the Rogue. So Rogue lost the Tibbot's Will bug, so that was pretty obvious to happen. So that alone kind of like moves Rogue down quite a bit on the higher end. So after level 80, level 90, basically, when you actually have access to dual uniques, basically every single Rogue build became like a combo point build, used the Tibbot's Will and the Condemnation bug. So that is gone. On top of this, Twisting Blades in particular also got some nerfs with Poison Imbuement. So you don't have like this crazy poison synergy anymore, and that kind of like took away a little bit from the boss killing damage and the boss killing by ability, making runs a bit slower. But overall, Rogue is a really solid class. I would call Rogue the best balanced class. It has entirely A and B tier builds basically. So there's Pen Shot that we consider to be like some of the best you can do on the Rogue. In general, the ranged Rogues got a lot of power this season with the buffs to Precision and Sky Hunter. So Sky Hunter is actually a useful, unique bow now for the Rogues. That is definitely included in some of those builds. And while combo point precision builds are rising up here. So they are going to be pretty wild. I've been video crafting a lot of these already. So just to show this real quick, for example, I've been working on this on my streams, and I've made a lot of these rogue planners as well. Some of them that I used in the Maxwell guides, some that I just made like that. And for PenRF, like this, numbers can get pretty wild on the new precision passive. So ranged rogue is really the name of the game here. But it's also still possible to play some of the other, like, you know, old fan favorites, I guess. There's Twisting Blades right up there. As I mentioned, it didn't really suffer all that much In fact, you know, in some cases you could even argue that it was buffed, as long as you don't rely on the poison imbuement. So I made some cool new setup that is gonna fly, like for speed farming. This is like S tier for sure. But, you know, it's gonna struggle a bit on the bosses later on, I guess. So this is mostly the downside here. Kind of similar with Death Trap. But we have a lot of really good rogue builds here. Basically, any core skill can be used, you know, to almost a similar success, it seems. And then we also have like a few things down here with rogues. So I'm really excited to play rogue, especially Penshot. But I also want to try out a bunch of new things. The new unique even that could potentially be pretty crazy. So it's like some kind of like spend all resources to do like one big hit kind of unique. If that has good stats, and depending on how that works with inner sight, that could become pretty crazy for some builds. But again, we don't know anything about it. So right now we kind of safely assumed it's not going to be that wild. And finally, we have the Sorc. So Sorc also kind of like lost its kind of shining star with the Ball Lightning build. So the Ball Lightning build was absolutely dominant on the Sorc class, kind of overshadowing everything by a mile, and that is gone now. So we don't know exactly how much Ball Lightning is nerfed. We put it down to A because it's probably still pretty good of a build, but it's not gonna like, you know, melt world bosses in 10 seconds. So yeah, it was good before Season 2. And it's probably going to be good again now, but not like ridiculous because of this bug. That is what's going to happen here for the Sorcs. And the best build most likely going to be Blizzard again with the ice spikes and stuff like that. There is definitely potentially for Meteor as well. People are really hyped about Meteor. We are also somewhat optimistic here, but also again, this is a completely untested build. With the way it will work in Season 3 with the new like cooldown, Meteor Shower, Legendary. So this is like a very different playstyle. It remains to be seen exactly how good it is, but it's probably not exactly S tier. Overall, for the Sorcerers, similar to the Rogues, they are actually fairly balanced with most of the builds now. Blizzard has done a pretty good job here at like lifting up some stuff like the Frozen Orb lately, and stuff like Ball Lightning and Chain Lightning, Fireball, like they all have moved a lot closer together now. So you see this here, that yeah, it looks like Rogues and Sorcs, they are like in a really good spot without being like really crazy OP, but they also don't really have like these super low builds here right now that no one really should play, I guess. And to put this a little bit in perspective, if we look back at the To AoZ tier list, right now I don't have it here, but we only had S tier, Hoda Barb, and Ball Lightning there. And then we had a bunch of other builds like Twisting Blades and PenRF, etc. in like A tier, and some other like builds like that were also pretty strong and actually managed to clear tier 25 To AoZ in the end. But with To AoZ actually dropping out of the game, we kind of like have this void of endgame like high-end challenges. There's nothing remotely close to To AoZ in the game, and this means that the actual power difference between builds doesn't matter all that much anymore again, at least until we get such super high-end content again, which right now doesn't seem to be the case. Now that might change when the Gauntlet comes out, but the Gauntlet is also like somewhat low-end content, so if you want to compete on a certain class, first of all, you're going to be competing against other people of the same class, so it doesn't actually matter that this one class is better than the other in that case. And also, I don't think that any build or any class at least will really struggle, even with like, you know, T109 dungeons or so going into Season 3. Those constructs may turn out really powerful and really impressive. They may turn out, yeah, maybe just as like a bit of like a support tool and that's it. And either way, I think there's nothing really to worry about as long as you play any of those up down to B tier builds, I guess. So S tier is going to be like very comfortable, you know, with like potentially like, you know, one shot the T100 Nightmare Dungeon boss kind of potential here, or like at least kill them very quickly in like, you know, 10-20 seconds or something. And otherwise just fly through the maps and be relatively safe. And then A tier, you know, you don't have to even go to tier 100s necessarily and farm them. Right now, the goal is actually going to be tier 90s. With the best loot in the game dropping there. So you don't even have to go that in the last like 10 tiers, and you can just play any of those builds, I think. So this pretty much sums up the Endgame Builds Tier List. So moving into the high end of the content basically that exists in the game right now. We'll also have to see how this plays out in the vault, for example, with the traps. So some builds will definitely have a bit of an advantage there. I guess in general, Storks are going to be pretty good there, because if Flame Shield, for example, protects you from the traps, then yeah, Teleport and Flame Shield is an incredible combo for that. And other classes like Barbs, you don't have anything really. Okay, you can charge around or something, but you know, you can't go and charge through a trap. So that's a bit of a struggle there. So there are definitely some perks here for some of those classes that are actually ranked a little bit lower. Similar for the Necro, like if your immunity works, you can use Blood Mist to maybe, like, you know, go around traps or through traps and stuff like that. So I think there's something here for every class. Then I also want to go quickly over some of the other tier lists here. We have the leveling builds tier list. So this is like the early game 1 to 50. You know, if you just want to blast straight to like Nightmare and Torment difficulty as fast as possible. We did move up some of the builds here, especially on the Barb. Double Swing looks pretty promising. Like Barb in general, leveling has improved significantly through the charge buff. So basically all these builds can use charge and just, you know, go domain tunnels and just decimate everything there basically. But even outside of those domain tunnels, you have to go get some codex powers in dungeons and stuff like that. These builds should work pretty well. We also moved up some other builds here, like Lightning Storm Druid looks pretty nice for Druids. Druids are actually not that slow at leveling anymore. And yeah, Necro is also like in a fine spot here, with Blood Surge being like probably the fastest leveling build. And there's also stuff like Bone Spear if you like that, and Sever. So you have a bunch of options. On the Rogue, we have Pen Shot and Twisting Blades up here. They are definitely extremely fast. And Sorcs also have some stuff like Chain Lightning, Fireball. So overall, the early game experience, it has definitely improved a lot, I would say, over the last like 1-2 seasons. A lot of people might still be under the impression that, you know, Barbs are atrocious to level and Druids are atrocious and stuff. And yeah, you don't really get like some of the crazy like aspects, for example, like the Shockwave from the Codex yet. Maybe you're gonna get that in the future, but there are definitely options that are working without the Codex as well. And lastly, we also have the Speed Farming Builds Tier List. So if you're interested in the, you know, high end, like level 100 decked out, you know, like if you want to do like easy stuff, Hell Tides, like low tier dungeons, etc., this is what you're looking at here. So we still have like some of those candidates that are like, you know, what we already know, like Shred, for example. There's just like the fastest build in the game. It can jump from enemy to enemy, one-shot everything basically. So that is really fast. We expect Charge Barb to be really good here. Rend Barb, they kind of like have the same interactions here, just like charge for everything as fast as possible. Of course, some rogue stuff. Again, more Barbs. They go really fast, just in general with leap and charge in these kind of scenarios. But we also have a bunch of Sorc things up here. So basically, once the high-end content becomes pretty easy, some of those classes actually converge a little bit in terms of their farming speed. Because, yeah, at level 100 with good gear, optimized for speed farming, you're gonna have movement speed cap on basically any build. And, you know, the difference between classes kind of shrink with like the damage output and the mobility. Like, for example, Necros, even though they don't have a mobility skill, they are still ranked here up in S tier because you can just go and run at 200% movement speed and one-shot like half in screen or so. So that makes them really good in the late game as well, once you are speed farming everything. But in general, this tier list looks somewhat similar to the Endgame Builds Tier List. So we have like all the builds ranked there, just with like a little bit of a different focus, looking at, you know, once you're actually completely blasting in the end game. And this is probably also a little bit similar to what we're gonna see on the Gauntlet later on. So that sums pretty much everything up that we have for our tier list here. So the Endgame Builds Tier List is out, and this is our best guess going into Season 3. Personally, I'm very excited for a season. I'm very ready for a new season. I want to race, I want to try stuff. The new builds look fun, and I'm very excited. So I hope you're going to be here with me for the journey. I'm going to be obviously doing like a big 24-hour stream, racing to World First and all that. Obviously, in Maxwell fashion, our goal is to update all of these builds here. Most of them are actually already ready by the time of the release of this video. Some of them are still coming very soon, but for example, if you're looking at the build guides, it'll say here Season 3 Construct, so this means that this is an updated guide. And the idea is to have all of these ready for season start, including all the way down here. Just the guides that have actually like a grayed out name, they cannot be clicked because right now they're not ready. Or, you know, like Companion Druid, we just don't have that yet. It's just listed there, for example. And if you scroll down a little bit, we have reworked some of the stuff. For example, you might have not seen this here. Or here's also the seasonal section. So we have like some new seasonal embeds here. Some of the details are not known yet, so we will update that very soon. But you can actually see a bit of the suggestions that we are planning to use in those guides. And we'll see what we actually figure out here. So I recommend that, especially in the first days of the season, keep an eye out on this seasonal section here in our guides, because that is actually the most likely to change significantly depending on the things that we learn once the patch goes live. But in those guides here, you're going to find all the information that you need about skills, paragons. We have also this paragon slider here, so you can actually see the progression steps. You can see like when to swap the glyphs, when to level up to level 15. Everything is listed here. We have the different variants, starting, early game, late game, T100s, etc. So you can click on these to see the optimized setups for different content, sometimes even with their own paragons there, for example, and a lot more information down here that might be interesting. And at this point, with Season 2 ending and a new season beginning, I also want to say a big thank you to you guys. It has been a blast for me so far making content for Diablo 4. I'm glad that so many people enjoy it. So thank you all for just being here, being an amazing community. I really appreciate that. And I hope everyone's going to have a lot of fun with our guides here on Maxwell. The team has been working hard and I'm quite proud of them. So there are two more things I want to mention here in this video, which is number one is the Support a Streamer program. So this is coming back. If you haven't been there on June on the launch, there was this mount gift event. So if you are a Twitch stream watcher, you can gift 2 subs to any streamer that is streaming in the Diablo 4 category on season start, and you get this mount. So if you want to do that with me, thank you very much. If you want to do it with anyone else, you know, go support everyone. Like, people deserve it for doing that content, I think. So make sure you show some love to the guys if you want to get that mount. And lastly, I also want to mention that, well, in case you have not been aware, I have my own synthwave music. So I just want to like show that off real quick here. This is not produced by me. It has been co-produced with Low Wave Records, but they have actually just dropped 30 new synthwave songs, and they are pretty amazing. I really like the result. And I have that Spotify link in my YouTube descriptions. That leads to first my stream playlist that has a lot of synthwave if you're a synthwave enjoyer, including this synthwave tracks here that are all, like, you know, you can find them with my name on Spotify and Apple Music, YouTube Music, everywhere. And they are copyright free. Feel free to add them to your playlist, enjoy them, have fun. And yeah, they're really nice for blasting. I run them all day on my stream. And with that, I'm gonna finish this video here. So hope you liked it. Wish you good luck in the season and see you guys next time.